Good afternoon, everyone. In today's lecture, we're going to be talking about how to develop a research question. Let's start with what is a research question. A research question is a question posed by the researcher that they're seeking to find an answer to by collecting data. That again can be quantitative data, qualitative data, or a combination of the both. In this course, we're going to talk about how to develop a research question using quantitative data. There are many different ways to develop a research question, but 3 things need to be included in every research question that is quantitative. The 3 things are the independent variable, which I also will refer to as an IV, the dependent variable, which I will also refer to as the DV, and the target population. In this lecture, you will see that I provide you with a formula of sorts for creating the research question. That formula is what is the relationship between the IV and the DV among the TP. You can use this formula to develop almost any research question. After we've developed a research question, we're also going to talk about hypothesis development. A hypothesis is the answer to the research question. We only use hypotheses in quantitative research. So when you are doing qualitative research, you don't have a hypothesis. There are several factors that are important to consider when developing research questions. We want to make sure that we avoid bias, which we will talk about this week. Other factors are moderating and mediating variables, which is explained in more detail in this week's lecture. As we develop our hypotheses, we have to consider directional relationships. A relationship between 2 variables can be positive, negative, or no relationship at all. In this week's lecture, we will discuss the difference between positive and negative relationships. It is important that you understand the difference between those. Please look at the examples that I provide in this week's lecture because you will be asked to provide different examples on the exam. Finally, 2 other important considerations in research is operationalization and levels of measurement. Operationalization is a term that you will hear me use throughout the semester and that you will see in many of the lectures. Operationalizing means that you take a word from the dictionary definition and you turn it into something that can be measured or quantified. It's important that we operationalize our terms so that we can measure them in a quantitative way in this class. An example of this is a word like happy. Happy can have a lot of different meanings and a lot of different ways to define it. But if we wanted to measure someone's happiness, we would need to ask a question that quantifies happiness so that we can do that. It might be done by saying on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the happiest, how happy are you? There are other examples in this week's lecture that I encourage you to look at. Finally, we have levels of measurement, which is important as we begin to create our class survey. There are 4 different levels of measurement that you should consider. They are outlined in the lecture, but I'll briefly describe each of them here. Nominal is the first level of measurement. This means that there is no value assigned to each of the response options in a question. A nominal question includes something like, what is your gender? Or what is your race? Many demographic questions, such as the 2 that I just gave you, are nominal in nature. Another type of nominal question is a yes-no question. This is also called a dichotomous question because it only has 2 response options. The second level of measurement is ordinal. In an ordinal variable, we do have a value assigned to the response options. However, there is not a distinct difference between the values, or we can't assign a numerical value between those differences. An example of an ordinal variable is a Likert scale. In the previous example of operationalizing, I said that we might ask someone on a scale of 1 to 5 to rate their happiness. That's an example of a Likert scale, which is an ordinal level variable, because there's not technically a value difference between choosing a 3 or a 4. Even though we can do the subtraction and make that the difference 1, in actuality, there isn't a value that we can assign to that difference because I might say a 3 while you might say a 4, but we actually feel the same happiness. We just rate it differently. The third level of measurement is an interval variable. In an interval variable, there is a value difference between the numbers, and they are ranked. An example of an interval variable is grade level. First, second, third, fourth. We can assign a value difference between them, and they are in a ranked order. And then finally, we have ratio level variables, which are nearly the same as interval level variables, and we often treat them as the same. The only difference is that an interval or a ratio level variable has a true 0. So something like weight or age could be a ratio level variable. If you have any questions as we go through this in this week, please let me know. Thank you.